So you want to find a cheap guitar to learn how to play guitar. I've got a couple examples of my attempts at that. This is the first guitar. By the way, these guitars are all under $200. And this is the first guitar that I bought, I think. But this was like $90. Bought it in Carbondale, I don't know, 1980 something. Didn't know anything about guitars, just bought it. Anyway, this one I bought in the late 90s, like 97, 98. And I bought it just because it sounded good. Sometimes you pick up a guitar and it just sounds good and it's like, yeah, it's what you want to have. But I didn't know anything about, the structure of it. I didn't know that went into it or even thinking about that. But I got really lucky. It's a great guitar. You can find an Alvarez that's under $200. And it sounds good to you. I would recommend picking it up right there on the spot because there's fantastic guitars. And this one I just recently bought that I kind of maybe put a little bit more thought into it, for what it's worth. But it seemed like it's going to be a really good guitar. But anyway, so I'll talk about what I put into the thinking of purchasing this guitar. So first and foremost is the subjectivity. Does it sound good to you? And I always take a guitar and I like to put them right next to my body when I'm checking them out. Got it up on my leg and I just get a G chord and I like to feel just how it sounds, how it resonates. The strings are all even. The voicing is kind of balanced, if you will. A fancy way of saying the strings all have the same kind of loudness to them. Now this one's a little bit heavier on the low end because of the mahogany, but I actually like that. So whatever tone you like, that's what you want to look for. Something that sounds good to you. Try it all in different areas. This one's got a particular sweet spot. So anyway, subjectively it sounds good and looks good to you. Okay, so now you're ready to look at it objectively. What is it about this guitar that makes it, a worthy purchase? The two biggest things first I look at are structural, and it's the bridge. Make sure that the bridge is, or the saddle, I guess this is the saddle part of the bridge, I think. I might be getting that mixed up. But anyway, make sure this is not separating from the body, and also that the body is supporting it fully. You want to make sure there's no hump behind the bridge and a dip in front of it, which means that the bridge is starting to pivot a little bit. Even it might not be separated from the top, it may be pivoting a little bit, and that means the structure behind it isn't very good, and that means that it may not stay in tune very well for you, and it may ultimately structurally fail and cause problems for you. And as a matter of fact, had I looked at this guitar when I was going to buy it, I would have seen it. And it's been like this for years, so maybe what I'm telling you doesn't really mean a whole lot because sometimes they can be like this and last forever. But if you look at it, you can see the separation going on right here on the bridge. Maybe, I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but you can almost see a bit of a hump behind it and a dip in front of it. And that, to me is it's an indication that structurally it's just not sound, it's not built very well. This one's held up, so, maybe it doesn't mean anything, but fundamentally, you just want to avoid that, I think. So the structure of the bridge, definitely want to make sure that's good. Then the next is the neck itself. A lot of times, one of the things you're doing subjectively also is feeling the thickness of the neck. Does it feel comfortable in your hands? Do you have the right feel to it? And a lot of times the more comfortable necks are thinner necks, and the thinner necks, especially on cheaper guitars, they're constructed of multi-pieces, which almost all your cheap guitar is going to be more than one piece neck. I mean, you can actually feel the bridge is like the heel here is like 4 pieces glued together, all about an inch, and you can actually feel it. But anyway, what you're looking for is to make sure that it's strong, that it has the strength it needs. And the easiest way to do that is to put your finger behind the top 3 strings, the 3 thickest strings, right there in the middle of the sound hole, and kind of come up here and look at it. Just lift up on those strings and put a pretty good amount of pressure on it, because that's equivalent to having a lot of bends, and maybe you can say it's kind of like a lot of bends over time, but you just want to see how much load you're putting on it. Is it enough to actually cause the headstock to flex? And you'd be surprised how many guitars you can actually see that flex going on because the neck is really weak. And those two things, to me, the bridge and the the neck flexing or the complaining waiting to happen. It's gonna, that it could, come apart on you suddenly, and you don't want that. So when you're looking for a guitar, you want a guitar whose flaws are not going to affect your ability to learn on it. So you want to be able to stay in tune. You want it whenever you're doing any of the playing that you're getting the notes that you're expecting to get. So you don't blame it on yourself. If it's the guitar's fault, you don't want it to be your fault, because that's going to keep you playing. You want a guitar that's going to keep you playing. So you got a guitar that looks good. You try to make a G chord, or you make whatever chord, and you one that sounds good. You've ruled out a couple of structural things. And there's a couple of things in the way it's set up that you want to look at just to make sure that they're going to be satisfactory for you. The one thing that would cause me to rule out a guitar right away is the intonation. And that is, if you check on the 12th fret, if you do a harmonic, you put your finger just lightly on the string and pluck the string, you get a harmonic. You get, maybe it's a false harmonic, but if you make the same note on the fret, it should be exactly the same tone. So check all 6 strings. And that should be, you should get exactly the same note. It doesn't have to be in tune, but it's best if it's in tune. You could even take a tuner, and you should get an E when you do the harmonic, and you should get an E when you do that note. And you should get an E when you go open. You should get 3 E's. 3 A's. 3 D's. 3 G's. And 3 B's. And 3 E's again. If you have a tuner. But if not, you can check it. Even if it's out of tune, you should still get the same note. And that's just the distance between here is the same as the distance here. And that's the intonation. You can't change that. You can't change that on most acoustics, but you certainly can't change it on cheap guitars, and they're more likely to not be set up properly. And if your bridge is moving over time, that intonation is changing. That means that it's not going to be intonated properly. And I'm going to hazard a guess that maybe this one might not be intonated properly now since it's been moving, but maybe not. Maybe it should be right. Yeah. See how that's a little bit higher pitch? Yeah, that's pretty significantly higher. So this guitar is not even intonated properly anymore. It's not going to necessarily give you even in tune, it's not really going to give you the right chords. You might get some dissonance when you're playing at the chord. So structurally, that. Now you've checked the intonation. So those are the 3 things that would rule out a guitar right away. Now the next stuff may not be necessarily stuff you're going to rule out a guitar, but it's going to be something you're going to have to deal with and just decide whether or not it's worth working on for you. First of all is the action, and that's the distance between the strings and the fretboard. And what I look for on the guitar is to make sure that when I bend a note, that the strings don't go up above my fingernails, that I don't go way under the strings, and that also that they don't fall underneath my finger. Because those are the things that are going to make you make these unwanted notes. If it goes under your fingers, this means that the string you're pushing against is going to hit the fret and maybe make a note. Or it might pop over your fingers and make a note. You don't want that. What you want is to have, when you're bending the note, for the string adjacent to it to catch right on the fingertips and bend up with it, so it doesn't have a chance of making a note. Now, that means that you're not going to want the absolute lowest action possible you ever see on a guitar, because your fingers might go over the top of it. And you also don't want really high action, because your fingers might go underneath it. And it's going to be kind of dependent on your own fingers, how it's going to work on the action. But I'm typically looking for something about this. Where are my fingers? There they are. So I'm looking for about that kind of action. Or if you look at how it's fitting against my fingers. And so you can see the action maybe, 3/16 or so. But it depends on your fingers to me. Now you're going to read in books all kinds of things about how to set up the right action. But the right action to me is how to prevent your fingers from making extraneous notes. And that's, over my years of playing, that's what I've learned. Is where I want the string to be positioned is right on my fingertips as I'm bending. Okay, The next thing you want to look at is the clean notes. Make sure that you don't get any buzzing on any of the notes that you play. So I pretty much only go up to the 14th fret. That's right on the edge of the body. The rest of these you can't really reach, so it's like, you're not going to play them anyway, so why worry about it? So I just... And what you're looking for is buzzing, that false, that sound. Now when you're putting the right pressure on it, normal pressure, you shouldn't get that buzzing. I'm just illustrating that by putting a little pressure on it. But what's happening is that no matter how hard you push there, maybe some of these frets are too high that are in front of it and causing that string to rattle against it. And that's another thing that's difficult to fix. Not impossible, but me, I just move on. I don't look at it too much if it has buzzing. Because there's too many cheap guitars out there, and plus, what you have to do, there's a risk of doing more damage, and ultimately, the damage is more likely, in my opinion, on the cheaper guitars because they aren't really well manufactured. They're going to have a super high quality neck, and you're going to have who knows what the quality of the truss rod is going to be. So anyway, just make sure you got good clean notes. And I've been able to find it on many guitars that I've played. That hasn't been what's ruled them out. It's usually structural that's what's ruled them out, but they usually still have good setup. And so the next thing, you've got clean notes going up and down the neck. The next is bending. And by the way, the buzzing is pretty much going to happen between the 7th fret and the 12th fret, because that seems to be where guitars have the most problems. So you can even almost just check there. Another one is bending the notes. You want to make sure that the note doesn't go dead when you bend it. You want to make sure that, you want to make sure that it maintains that note all the way through bending it. Because sometimes if the fret's too high, it'll actually cause that note to die as you bend it. So I check that again between the 7th and the 12th fret, just to make sure that they all just hold the note, that doesn't die any. So that means the frets are pretty much set up right, and you're going to have good. The next thing that I check, and this is kind of a check of the nut here, and maybe the 1st fret, is on the 2nd fret, which is where you make most of your open chords. Is going to be involved the 2nd fret. And what I found on a lot of guitars, especially cheap ones, is that either this 1st fret isn't right or this nut isn't right. So what happens if you put higher pressure on the 2nd fret, you'll actually change the pitch of the note. So I just come here to each of these notes. I strike the note and then apply additional pressure. I just push as hard as I can. Go from normal pressure to as hard as I can. Just make sure the pitch doesn't change. And I make a D chord and just push on it. And you can get a little bit of a tremolo almost, but you don't want it to go like a half step. Some of these guitars sometimes they'll go almost a half step and go out of tune. So you play a chord and you won't get you won't get a D chord, and you'll get something else. So anyway, so up and down the neck, bending, intonation, and that, and then the action. And honestly, if you've got a guitar that sounds good, looks good, doesn't have the 2 structural problems, doesn't have note problems up and down the neck, you're good to go. That's a $200 guitar that can do you some good for a while. Now you're asking, hey, how come you didn't look at the neck, and how come you didn't talk about the tuners? Well, let's start with the tuners. You know the tuners are going to be junk, but there's ways to deal with that. There's no tuner around the world that's going to be a showstopper for me unless they're already broken. You look at them, if they're already broken, then yeah, you can find a different guitar. But what's going to happen to them that's going to affect you more likely is that over time, these might even be plastic, and so as you're tuning over time, these might break. But they're actually pretty cheap to replace. The biggest quality issue that a lot of folks have with these are the lash and the play that you get on them. There are ways around it. If you string the guitar properly, and then you would take up the lash properly, it doesn't really matter to me how much play or lash you have in these tuners. You can work your way around it by tuning it and stringing it properly. I've been using that technique for years, and you notice even on this guitar, with the issues it has and the crappy tuners it has, it's still kind of holding a tune. I haven't changed these strings in a long time. So it says something maybe about the neck's not moving, I guess, too. So don't worry about the tuners. you can deal with that. The neck, well, by checking intonation, checking the notes up and down the neck, checking the bending, checking that, you really essentially check the neck already. And it doesn't really matter how warped it is, does it? Because you're getting the results that you want. You're getting the frets all work, or set up right, get the right action. So the only reason I would check the neck is if I had a problem that I wanted to fix. So if everything was perfect about the guitar, the guy said it was $50 off that day, and I had some buzzing, or I had some issues with bending the neck, then I'd be like, okay, let's see if I can fix this. How bad is that? How badly warped is it? Or is it a fret problem? But other than that, just check the notes. Don't worry about the neck, how straight it is. It doesn't really matter as long as you're getting the notes you want. Okay? So that's how you find a $200 guitar or less, and there are a lot of them out there. So check it out. I'll do another video on stringing the guitar so you know how you don't have to worry about the tuners. Okay? Cool.